Good morning, friends. Welcome to episode 77 of the Make Saints podcast. I'm Drew Downs, and this one is called Being Different. One of the most known yet strangely under-discussed aspects of being Christian in the United States in particular, but, this accounts for most of the Western world, is that the idea of being different is baked into our tradition. It's baked into our strict scripture, and it's baked into the very DNA of who we are. And yet, for most of the last 2,000 years, hegemony has been the priority for the church and many of the people who claim to follow Jesus in general. And this is why it is probably the most under-examined and yet most obvious characteristics about what it means to be Christian. But one could argue about this. The same could be said about many other similar religions, and particularly the civic religion of sort of pseudo-Christianity in America. So I want to take a quick look at this strange paradox and what it means for us. So it is not overstating it to say it this way. It is totally real that the first 300 years, approximately, first 3 centuries in the Common Era, what it meant to be a follower of the way of Jesus was to be persecuted, was to be an outsider, but most importantly was to be different from common culture, from the rest of the world, from the way things are in life. And then, thanks to a Roman Emperor, Constantine, Christianity became the dominant religion. So it went from being a religion that was anti-empire, that was to be the opposite of what is normal, to reject the normal things about culture, not because it's normal, but because it's stuff that's bad for us: violence, greed, like oppression, abuse of other people, exploiting from them, making money off of the backs of other people, right? Stealing from them. Like, those values are not the values of Jesus. So they are things that we are supposed to not do. We are supposed to walk a different path from that stuff. And then, at the first part of the 4th century, Constantine is like, hey, let's all be Christians. And ever since that moment, we have taken on the role of empire, of dominance, of superiority, and therefore of safety. If we fast forward now to 1700 years to the present, this is why those stories from evangelical Christians about their own persecution, or their sense of not being the dominant party, or the secularization of America, or the lack of control, the lack of dominance, the lack of universal supremacy of the church. All of that fear is entirely the opposite of our story. It is the opposite of the foundation of our faith, but has been the vehicle and the motivation of the expansion of the faith for 1,700 years. So what then do we do with the concept of being different when today it is cast by the dominant group to avoid any kind of responsibility for their actions, right? Responsibility for exclusion, responsibility for impoverishing, responsibility for exploiting, the responsibility for letting the state do things to our people, right? Letting that be the supporting ways of war, supporting cultures in which people can literally die in the streets from lack of ability to go to the hospital because they have a lack of access to appropriate medical care and food and shelter and the like. That all of this stuff that we just sort of tolerate and say is normal in our world. We have all of that going on. And we dare call ourselves Christian. We dare say that we are oppressed when someone invites us, asks us to bake a cake for their wedding, or require our private company to give health insurance coverage to basic medical needs. Life-saving, life-preserving, vibrant living, protecting medical care. And we dare call that persecution. How distorted is our sense because of all of that junk, all that BS has us, the rest of us, the most of us, confused or conflicted or have the wrong idea about what it means to be different, to live differently. There is so much we need to do to develop in our own sense about what living differently is. But I do think it begins with a sense of living not in fear of persecution. Again, that doesn't make any sense given the scripture. It's actually the opposite. It's to embrace what it means to be different from a culture that seeks to exploit, that encourages such independence that we reject the dependence on our neighbors. The idea of being a bigger family full of wonderful neighbors in our neighborhood, that we aren't seeing the dream of God in the world around us. All of that is our work. That is what it means to live different now. And it does mean that we sometimes have to take criticism and take the rejections by people who would rather preserve the status quo of violence and hatred and abuse and exploitation, because that is the way of the world. We have to understand that, because living differently means accepting that is the side effect of challenging things that are wrong in our world today. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.